We're at the local candidates in primary 2026 meeting at RPEN, Retired Public Employees of Nevada.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This is going to be kind of a different meeting, I think. We've got quite a few candidates that came down, and I appreciate them coming to give us a little bit of knowledge about their expertise and why they're running for a political job. And this is only candidates that are in the primary, but we do have a guest of one that is here that's running for the district attorney's office. And so we'll let him say a hello too. Anyway, so with that, I would like to open the meeting, but if all of you would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Nancy will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Since we have a lot of candidates to go through, I'm going to dispense with the approved minutes and treasurer's report also. So we'll take those up at another time. I just want to do one thing, because I have to do it because it's May. I'm just verifying that the slate of officers for this next year is what you want as a slate of officers. So it would be Mary Kaczynski as the delegate, Donna Ward, or Karen Dini as the treasurer, Nancy Purcell as the secretary, and Donna Ward vice president, and myself as president. So is that agreeable with this group?
Yes.
If there's somebody that wants to volunteer, please let us know. We just want to double check. All right, so we're leaving it that way. I'm not even going to take a vote because I don't think anybody's going to vote no. I've tried too many times here. Okay, so. I can do them quick. May birthdays is Richard Strock, Cheryl Hagan, Edwin Nesbitt, Dixie Merriman, Phyllis Langero, Sherry Tibbles, Stephen Todd Donnelly. June birthdays: June Matthews, Leanna Olo, Mary Milligan, John Prida, Christine Smith, Barbara Enigson, Diane Weissep, Karen Perrell, and Lucille Adams, David Rohr, and Barbara Hughes. And July is Nikki Bryan, Sylvia Banta, Karen Smith, Laura Tomac, Donna Glass, Joanne Salivary, Douglas Casabon, Charles Steele. And August is Catherine Newman, Roy Enigson, Judith Davis, Ann Gable, and David Denriff, and Donna Ward. So those are the birthdays, and then we'll have our meeting in September. But we have a picnic in August, so don't forget the picnic. And that will be at the Mountain View Park. Okay. Have I done everything done? Are you sure?
I was going to look up the date of that picnic.
It's the,
Where's the last date?
it's the 25th, I believe. August 25th is the annual picnic in the Mountain View Park, and it's from 11 to 2. And any of you as candidates are welcome to come back and join our picnic too. So, all right, with that, I'd like to read a little short presentation here so that the candidates know what we are. We are a statewide organization that offers protection for PERS, Public Employees Retirement System, and PEBS, Public Employee Benefit Program. And we are here for active employees and retired employees. We are there to protect their benefits. That's what we do. We have lobbyists at the legislature to protect all senior programs, and we're trying to recruit retired and working employees to join RPEN. We represent retired and active employees and additional benefits that are offered through a membership in RPEN. We have other benefits that are offered. So we're a nonprofit organization with almost 7,000 members throughout the state, protecting the pension and benefits for both retired and active employees covered by the Nevada Public Employees Retirement System. RPEN is governed by a board of directors, and years ago it was decided our group could not endorse candidates. But we can listen to what everybody has to say and ask questions, and that's what we're going to do today. So hopefully we're going to try to do, I don't know if all of you, I just need to see if I've got everybody down. Scott Keller's here. Mark Jones. Yes, okay. And Cole Mortensen. Okay. Is Mark Phillips here? Okay, I missed that. Okay. And Micah Triplett. Okay. Pete Chapin. Right. And Darin Farr.
Here.
And Michael Moore, who's not here, and Tom Hendrix. No, okay. So, okay. Then what we're going to do is try to do between 5 and 10 minutes at the most, but if you can just tell us about yourself and what you have, you know, your plans are and why you're running for an office.
Do you want to do 8 minutes then?
You can do 8 minutes, how's that? We just don't want everybody to talk forever, and I don't want questions until after everybody is done speaking. So that way we can listen to everybody. So at this time then, okay. So everybody, so we'll start with commissioner candidates. Scott Keller.
You want us to the podium or just sit right here?
You can come up to the podium so you get out of the way. I'll get out of your way. I appreciate all of you coming and doing this. We are quite a social organization. We like to hear what's going on, and we will be doing this again in September or October for the general election. So, all right.
Hello, my name's Scott Keller. I'm current county commissioner for District 2. I'm also the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners on my second year. I was born here in Nevada, and my dad was born here in Nevada too, in northern Nevada in Reno. And that doesn't give me any privilege, but it does, you know, I have experience in northern Nevada and understand northern Nevadans. I'm currently in the Republican Party, having served as the chairman of the Lyon County Central Committee here. I also served as past chairman and the former chairman of the Republican Party. I spent my career in the building trades, and I'm a licensed general and electrical contractor, and I also own a real estate business. I've served on advisory boards in the area. I started off on the Silver Springs Advisory Board. I chaired that board for 15 years. I also chaired the Central Lyon County Parks and Recreation Board for 14 years. Being a commissioner, there's a lot of responsibilities, but a lot of relationships that you have to develop. We live in a Dillon state, which means that we have to go to the legislature, and everybody here is very familiar with that. You have to go up there if we have a problem down here. We can't do things without the express written permission from them. It's got to be an NRF. So at that, I serve on different committees. I serve on the agriculture and rural. I'll start at the national level, kind of get it down to the local level. I serve on the agriculture and rural affairs steering committee for National NACO. National NACO is out of the 3,069 counties that we have in America. 80% of them are rural. So I sit on that steering committee to help out what we need here in Nevada, make sure that no bad laws happen. They just went through the Farm Bill just recently, so we had our input and everything else so we don't get injured here in Lyon County. I also sit on the Rural Action Caucus on the NACO, National NACO. That caucus is, again, 80% of us are rurals. On that caucus is where we make final decisions on what policy is going to be on the national level. That we're going to, and when you carry that 3,069 counties before as a lobbyist group, we get what we want, or at least we get most of what we want. And I happen to serve as the vice chair of that board. So we get our input. It means a lot up there. I've also, in Washington, I've worked with our senators, members of Congress, secured $3.2 million last year for Lyon County, and I requested $6.7 million this year, and I know that they've all been picked up by the senators and congressmen already, so that usually means it's going to go forward. I stay engaged in Carson City, bringing it back to the state level. I'm on Nevada Association of Counties. On that, I sit on that board, on the executive board as the vice president of NACO. Next year, I'll be the president-elect. The year after that, I will be the president. The year after that, I will be the past president. That's our lobbyist group that works for all the counties in Carson City. So that brings a lot for our county. For the next 4 years, we'll be sitting at the board of what we want. to either work on, or, you know, there's a lot of bills. To give you an example, there's, I'll say something about my opponent. Last time he was in office, there's been 5,000 laws passed. You gotta stay active. You gotta be there, gotta know what's going on. There's always gonna be bills. Sometimes it might not hurt us, but we can make a bill better, so we gotta keep working on it. So that's what I've been doing at the legislative part. I sit on Quad County Legislative Committee. I also sit on the NACO Legislative Committee. My big purpose, or whatever, what I'm trying to accomplish. So that's all. I've got I sit on state lands, use planning commission. I sit on a bunch of different boards, but my main thing is to keep our rural character here in Lyon County, but also bring in the development that we can use to supplement our futures, right? You got mining here, you got agriculture here, but all these businesses are starting to dwindle down because they don't have the money. They're in influx, because if a mine shuts down, we got to diversify. And so that's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to bring in the big businesses that supplement the small businesses, and we can move forward and be an economic powerhouse. We're the third largest county in the state, and we should look like it. And so to me, it's like, what can we do? How can we move forward? And I'll answer all your questions when we're done here, but I think that's enough time.
You did good.
Thank you.
A minute to spare.
Yeah. District 2 for the commissioners, and Davy Stix is the opponent. And Davy was supposed to be here because I remember him saying he would be here. So, and we'll go to District 5 candidates with the first one, Mark Jones.
Yeah, can I just say for David, he had an emergency on his ranch today.
Oh.
He had an explosion of one of the wells or something.
Oh my goodness.
And so
He's got more,
he's got
more pressing
more
things.
important things right
He's
now.
got more pressing things, yes. Okay. Scott, I don't want to keep your phone, but I will. It might ring and then I'll.
It's on silent. It's
Okay.
on silent. I've learned my lesson.
I know we all do that, so. Thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Mark Jones, and I'm running for District 5 County Commissioner. I moved into this area about 6.5 years ago. And my wife and I, we bought a little ranch in Wellington. It's called Done Moving. And we started out trying to do ag. It's an agricultural zone property, but it used to be 108 acres. And by the time they sold off 80 of it to the farm, to the dairy, I had 24 acres. And I used to get insulted being called a hobby farmer. But now I know what it means. It means you can't make money, no matter how hard you work. So we give our water and I sold all the wheels to people that needed them on their ranches for nothing. And I'm a real big proponent of the farmers. They're all struggling. They're having hard times even paying their bills and their taxes. So if they need help, they'll find it with me. If they need to make change in what they're doing on their properties, I will support that, because we're talking about multi-generational families that have worked hard to try to make a living and make that man work. But there's a lot of things that have changed over the last year. Water's one of them. You know, we got people in Wellington selling off all their water, their groundwater, which means it goes to the conservancy and never comes back. So we'll have dust bowls out there before too long, because they need the money to survive. And some of the biggest farmers out there are selling their water, which makes a big change. So, you know, when we have a master plan for the county, and part of the master plan is, it's a small group of people that put it together and said, this is what the county should look like. Because, you know, like most people don't get involved. They don't want to participate because it takes a little bit of time and effort. So they don't do it anymore. So we have a small group of people that decides how the entire county is laid out. The problem is, that's a living, breathing document. So as we change, it has to change with us. It has to be open for change. It has no legal standing. Zoning and our codes have all the backbone. But we have to get past that master plan if we want to change something in the community. So the farmers are doing that. They're filing and they're changing it. The last of the Seeley family put in the data center in that area up there, and the solar farms. But he was getting 1/5 of what everybody else was getting on their farmland. He has to do something. And that's the way to save and get the most value out of his land. So I didn't have a problem with it. Currently, I sit as vice chairman of the planning commission here in Lyon County. I've been on the commission for a few years now, a little over 30. So we get a lot of the projects before they go up to the commission. And we are advisory on it. We don't have any teeth in saying this is what it's gonna happen. So we listen to it. People come and throw the same stuff at us. I know one of our meetings a couple months ago, we had 500 pages of supporting documents that they gave us 2 days before the meeting. They gave them 1,200 sheets. They had to get through that in 2 days. So we're dealing with a lot of big projects right now. We are growing, we are the fastest growing county in the state. Nobody's growing faster than we are. But a lot of that growth we're not prepared for. The infrastructure's not there. There's a lot of things we have to take into consideration. So they come through us, we give our opinion, it goes up to the Scott's commission, and then they make the final decision. But we're getting at this level that we're at, we get exposed to a tremendous amount of the same type of operations that the commission does. So it's a wonderful stepping stone to come in here and spend these years and then move up. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. You know, I read an article, in fact, it was, Vida wrote it this morning saying that, you know, where are these people coming to want to run for office? Where have they been for the Republican Party for the last years? We have a lot of politicians that show up when they want to run for office. But where have they been to support us? You know, I've been with this, the Lyon County Central Committee for years. And we have supported candidates, both financially, time, and I think we're missing that in the political realm, because people will throw Republican on their boards because that's how they're voting. But where have they been to support the Republican Party? And the answer to that is they haven't been. So I think it's important that we start supporting the people that have supported our party. Even if it's a Democrat, where have they been to support their party? You know, you can't sit on the couch and complain about stuff without getting active, because elections have consequences, major consequences. And at the speed we're going right now, this is not on the job training. We make quick decisions that we have to make them quick because there's a lot of this stuff is under time frames that they have to be exercised. And a lot of that is taken away from the county, and like Microsoft doesn't, he has a certain amount of time, they say, okay, we'll have this done at this time. If they don't agree, you know, we don't have the right really to change their time frame, you know, and this was what happened recently at a hearing. So this has been probably the dirtiest political season I've ever seen in my life. I'm 75, everybody's tearing down signs, run them over with cars, you know, putting hate posters out in Wellington and Smith Valley against me because they don't like a project that I'm trying to put on my agricultural land, which is agriculture. So instead of listening to people's facts and stuff, they're tearing down signs, running them over with cars, just doing ugly stuff that we don't need to do. Our signs are out there just to let you know who's running, so you have a little bit of name recognition when you look at your ballots. These signs cost $100 a piece. And so when people start ripping them down and stuff, now it becomes a felony if you get the $2,500, $2,300 I think it is. So we have people right now that if we catch them, they will get felonies on their records. And it's just not our signs. They're taking down a lot of people's signs. So I've got the experience. I've got 55 years in upper management, many businesses. I'm a licensed manufacturer, distributor, and route operator in gaming in the state of Nevada. I've been here doing business with Nevada since 2000. So I'm not a rookie to the area. You know, it's business. We need to run our county like a business. I just looked at the budget for next year. We're 1% above what we're taking in. So, you know, we're in the hole. And if, you know, we need to make good decisions to bring in some properties that will pay taxes and keep our tax base. Because without that, we can wish all we want. There won't be any money to get it done. And that's where we're lacking right now, is this tax revenue. So we're restricted on the limit of how much property taxes you can charge. I mean, I feel sorry for the fire departments. They're really restricted with their money. We have a big fire department with like 4 people on staff usually, and they're running fire 2 ambulances, so that means they're gone for 2 hours at a time to Reno to transport. That's the problem we're having. So we've been, pardon?
Stop, your time's up.
She's a school teacher, so.
No warning.
Sorry.
She's a retired school teacher,
I
and
know.
hasn't lost
The
that.
paddle will come out.
It does. Nancy, it does. Okay, next one is Cole Mortensen, please. Your turn, Cole.
Pencils down, turn the sheet over.
Yeah.
Hi, well, good morning, everybody. I'm Cole Mortensen, and I'm running for County Commissioner for District 5. I know a handful of you, met a handful of you, but I'm 4th generation Nevada on one side and 5th generation on the other. I grew up in Fernley, graduated from Fernley High School. I've got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in civil engineering. I worked for the Department of Transportation for little over 20 years. My wife and 2 kids live in Wellington. We ended up just buying a 47-acre piece of property with water rights, so familiar with some of that stuff, you know, getting back into farming into things. Moved back to Wellington, or Smith Valley, in 2019. Prior to that, I was living in Fernley. So that's a little bit about me and my background. Why do I want to be a county commissioner? Well, I spent 20 years as a public servant. Through that time, I worked I'm a recovering bridge engineer, and then I worked my way up through project management. And in my time in project management, I actually got saddled with the state's largest transportation project, infrastructure project, believe it, even bigger than Hoover Dam by the total cost, and there was a little over $1 billion. But it included about $240 million worth of right-of-way, so I'm very familiar with the legal repercussions of properties, property values, easements, utility corridors, et cetera, et cetera. Along with that, it's making those decisions and being a good steward of taxpayer dollars. With it being a $1 billion project, I used to kind of joke that, like, you know, I started my day off with the problem that had the most number of zeros and worked my way from there down. But really it was about serving the public in the end. You know, what can we do best? In that project, I ended up having probably 125 different public or stakeholder meetings, and I found that transparency and communication with the public was the best way to actually help a project like that move forward. Those meetings were between homeowners associations, churches, elected officials, the state legislature, county commissions, city councils, you name it. I had to present to them and explain this project, explain the process, explain some of the challenges, but really it was 270,000 cars a day on the 2 most heavily traveled stretches of road in the entire state. And when it was under construction, the contractor was doing $30 million worth of work a month, and that kind of boils down to about $1 million a day in the median of the I-15. And so those decisions had to be made quickly. As far as what we're seeing in our county and kind of some of the focuses, obviously we're seeing growth in ways that we haven't seen growth before. Growing up in Fernley, all the alfalfa fields and all the grass hay fields that used to be there that I used to run through getting home from school have all grown houses now. And that kind of leads a little bit into some of the tax base issues that we have, because we have communities like Dayton and Fernley where that tax base is largely based on the residences and then being a bedroom community to Carson City and Reno Sparks. And that also makes it a little bit more difficult for businesses to move in and be successful, because people are so used to it and it's so easy for them to get into Carson City or Reno or Sparks that the tax revenue from commerce ends up going to those cities instead of Lyon County. So I think that those are some of the challenges that we can face on that side of things. From an ag standpoint, fertile ground and water, we're not getting any more of that. So I think that whatever we can do to make ranchers' lives easier and to protect the agricultural land that we have, the better off we're going to be. The master plan was mentioned. I think making some of those zoning changes so that you're strategically and well, give you a little water. Strategically and actually deliberately zoning according to that. And back to some of what I mentioned earlier, you know, if you can actually work on zoning so that you're keeping commercial centers near residential centers, industry where industry should be, and then avoiding allowing industry to move into places like agricultural land. I think that those are some of the areas that we could work on going into the future. The problem is that we're not necessarily sure what the future's gonna, oh, thank you so much. Not really sure what the future's gonna hold. You know, 3 years ago, we wouldn't have known that so many people would be fired up about data centers, and yet here we are. And I think that the key with the data centers is to make sure that we have policies and specifications in place so that when they come in to get permitting, that they're actually held to a standard that makes sense. And we can learn from other states' mistakes and make sure that we're actually putting the right policies in place for these data centers. For example, somebody mentioned, oh, if one catches fire, you get this toxic cloud from it. Well, why can't we do some sort of fire suppression requirement so that if something does happen, that they have the ability to prevent a minor environmental issue, right? Along with that, I just think that there are other ways, I'm trying to remember. Right now we have grant opportunities. It's the Rural Healthcare Act. There's one more word in there. But Nevada got $180 million to help rural healthcare in our communities, and I think that it's an awesome opportunity for the county to actually step in and try to get grant funding that would help. And part of the problem that we face is still getting qualified employees to work in our healthcare system here within the county. But if we can provide training, if we can provide updated equipment, if we can keep the facilities updated, I think that'll go a long ways to actually improving outcomes for the people of Lyon County and help recruit and retain employees that we need to have improve our healthcare system. Along with that, you know, it's too late in a lot of places. And for me, working for the Department of Transportation for as long as they did, I used to tell people that we've embraced urban sprawl to a fault. What do I mean by that? Developers come in and they find a piece of land, or a lands bill comes in and they buy a section of ground and it's way out of town. And they build cheap houses on it because that's where they can get the biggest margin out of it. The problem is that now you have that much infrastructure between where your services are and where now this big development is. And that means you have more traffic on those roads, you have more maintenance, and you have just more expenses for that situation. Whereas if you can plan it and maybe disincentivize that urban sprawl, forcing development to occur at a higher density next to commercial areas, you can help provide that walking distance potentially between a residence and a commercial area. I was thinking earlier, you know, Fernley used to have a really nice Main Street. You know, it's gone. Yerington, I think, is really neat because you drive down Main Street, it still has that feel. Am I out of time?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. But Dayton has like kind of the old town Dayton area, but really it's kind of sprawled out too. And really what that means is that if somebody wants to, if you got 3 or 4 stops, and if you drive to Carson City and you can get them all in one shopping center, people are going to drive to Carson City versus bouncing all over Fernley or Dayton trying to get all your grocery shopping done. So that's not something that's going to start today, but it's something that's going to be into the future. Back to the tax issue as well. Property tax is something that we can't change as a county, but the legislature can. And so lobbying the legislature to push for something like that can help improve our tax revenue. But that's not a tomorrow thing either. The BDRs, I think, we're due in March, which means that the soonest that something like that could be heard, unless one of the, I think it's either the governor or the head of the Assembly and the Senate can actually issue BDRs after that date. Now! 2029 is the earliest. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank
Cole
you.
Mortensen, running for District 5 County Commissioner.
Thank you, Cole. Mine is Mark Phillips.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us all here today. I'm running for District 5 County Commissioner as well. For those of you that don't know, our current sitting County Commissioner, Dave Hockaday, is not running again, and that's why a lot of us, I think, come out of the woodwork. He's done a fine job in a lot of people's opinions, and we just want to try and fill those shoes. So, I come from a rural background. I've been involved in agriculture and such since I was in 4-H as a little kid, and that worked through 40-plus year career in ag business. As a matter of fact, about 45 minutes, an hour before I got here, I was up to my ankles in irrigation water running ditches, so I understand that side of it. My career, I ended up working, like I say, from started out working in the local feed store, loading feed, sweeping floors, doing things like that after school and weekends. Did that through high school, moved on to college, the next high school kid came in, which is the kind of thing that I'd like to see available in a lot of our towns, where there's those starter jobs where the local kids can come in, they can work part-time, they can do something to help out the businesses, and then move off to college, move off to whatever they're doing, and the next kid keeps revolving through. For me, it ended up working into, like I said, it's an ag business, farm equipment mostly. I ended up at one point working for a international farm equipment dealership or manufacturer that did business in over 100 countries around the world. I was responsible for the southwest of the United States, and farm equipment, it's all rural towns and farming and farmers, and in that 40 years I've seen a lot of changes. Like Mark said earlier, farmers are really struggling these days, and diversification is very important. So hopefully we can help. A lot of people drive into this valley, drive into Smith Valley, which is the bulk of District 5, which is who we're here to represent. And what draws them in is the scenery and the views and the farmlands and the open space. And that's gonna take a little bit to keep. I mean, there's farmers out there. Some farmers are selling water, as Mark said. Some are selling to other farmers, some are back and forth, some are selling to the Conservancy. But we need to watch that overall. I've worked with my wife, and I bought I think this year, it'll be a 150-year-old farmhouse over in Smith Valley, and we're working on that, and the barn that goes with it. And we're working with some locals there that are opening a cafe, so we're in business there. I just want to see some small businesses come in, and part of that is going to be driven by some of the large businesses, large construction projects that we have coming in that are relatively short term, but they're going to need the support infrastructure to go with it. So we're going to, when all those people come in and they're working here, we get 250, 300, 350 people coming in for different projects. They're gonna wanna go grocery shopping, they're gonna have to wash clothes, they're gonna wanna go out for dinner, they're gonna wanna do that stuff, so we'll need some of those businesses and stuff here to support that. I recently watched my son chase around trying to buy his first home here in Smith Valley, either one he was looking for. So that once he had his house, he could propose to his girlfriend, so I'll end up with a daughter-in-law this fall. So, but after getting beat out of a half a dozen places that he put offers in on, he ended up having to buy outside of the area, which is not ungodly distance away. It's over in TRE, but I'd rather have him here in our county. And so that, and knowing that Dave Hockaday is no longer going to be running, I've been serving on a number of different committees and boards around the Historical Society, the Citizens Advisory Board, Parks Board, Hall Board. There's a group of us in Smith Valley right now that are working to put together the first 4th of July celebration at the park, fireworks and all of that. So the 250th anniversary of the country, we figured if we can't pull it together this year, we're not going to do it. But I've been involved in that kind of thing, and again, when Dave announced that he wasn't going to be running again, I had a number of people tap me on the shoulder and said, with what you've been doing for the community, why don't you consider running for county commissioner? So here I am. I haven't been in politics. I have come from a family of politicians, and I had other citizens that just said, hey, we like what you're doing, and we'd like to see you take it to the next level. So here we are. So I'll cut it short and give some more time to Micah. Mark Phillips.
Thank you.
District 5. Thank you.
2 hours left.
All right. The next one is Micah Triplett.
Hello everyone, my name is Micah Triplett. For those of you who don't know me, I'm also running for Lyon County Commissioner in District 5. I come with a background primarily in public service, but I too was born right here, actually down the street, and it wasn't much longer after that they said you couldn't have babies here anymore. Don't blame me, or do. But being born and raised here isn't a qualification. It is an experience though, and it means that I'm very familiar with the things that we're being confronted with. I've been very engaged. I finished up my career with the fire service a couple of years ago, and I saw that our chamber was in decay, and I jumped in there and I got things going. Fortunately, we were able to find someone with the capacity that Melanie Young has to get that thing going. But my vision is a little more broad stroked. With the amount of projects that are coming in, I think my background is uniquely beneficial to it. As a public safety professional for the years that I served as a Quad County hazardous materials technician specialist, which means when chemicals were being stored or put into facilities, I was trained to be able to respond to those, but also to have planning in place to make sure that safety metrics were available for the public to view through different, I'm brain farting the term, but basically the documents that come with them. I've responded to hazardous materials events, I've responded to fires, I've responded to emergency medical events for a long time. So I understand the risks of living rural, and we do have a lot of big projects are coming in. So my background in public safety, I think, including my time as a fire inspector, my certifications in that, my degree in fire science, and now my most recent degree in financial economics really does position me to help identify problems before they become problems. One of the biggest things that we do as firefighters is identify through preventative measures what could be a risk associated with something coming in. And there are very, very scary problems coming in, but I think that if we have good planning in place, if we understand international fire code, if we understand international building code, we can start addressing those in real time with real authority. So being raised here, I also grew up doing construction. I was actually in the building department filling out permits when I was 13. So I understand a lot of the construction in our area. I built a litany of the onion sheds in this area growing up. And quite frankly, all of this background makes me an excellent candidate for preventative modeling, but also assessment that comes with real objective reasoning that can be displayed. One of the things that I'm really advocating for, and I'm constantly doing, is communicating openly on social media platforms with the way these things are coming in. And I open dialogue even if it seems like a project that nobody wants. Everybody's fighting it. Well, we have to understand the rules that are in place for us. And I heard somebody mention our Dillon state. Nevada is a Dillon state, and when there's NRS and when there's ordinances in place and when there's private property rights, we have to look at those so that we don't put our county into a position of being sued for improperly managing these projects. We have to respect. I don't want to go into my neighbor's yard and tell them how to mow it. I don't want that to be done to me, but we have to be really cautious in how Title 15 zoning and occupancies are addressed. Because you also got to be very concerned about the residents that live adjacent to projects, and how do we mitigate those. So some of the ideas that I've come up with as these projects come, I hear a lot of people talk about the fears, but I'm a predictive model guy, and that comes from finance training. I want to see reclamation bonds intact. So if people are worried about their wells, maybe we can look for ways to manage those in a financial market preemptively, like the federal lands require. BLM requires bonds. Forest Service requires bonds for these solar fields. Mines require bonds. I think we could start looking at some other options so that we can have safety metrics in place. And as far as like the hazardous materials components, I heard somebody mention battery energy storage, the BESS. Those do have real risks. Those same risks exist in every EV, every electrical vehicle. And if they're in an assembly, or if they're at an assembly occupancy, that's a lot different than if they're at an industrial data center occupancy. We obviously don't want a bunch of BESS right next to a church. Like, that doesn't make as much sense. So being able to look at those from a public safety perspective, I think is really important, but also understanding how those fires work. You can't actually extinguish those fires. They have to self-extinguish. And that's scary. So the way International Fire Code has actually addressed those is by making the containers shorter and more robust in that they don't create as big of a plume to have to be mitigated. But those also have like ranges that we can look at International Fire Code and say they have to be this far from this type of occupancy. So safety measures are in place, and it's just our job to make sure that those rules are being followed, and we have planners and building inspectors and code enforcers that are helping do that. But as projects come in, we also have to look at what kind of benefits they have, not just the detriments. As a group of retirees in here, the last thing I want to see is a bunch of assessed values go up on residents. And one of the best ways to prevent that is to have ad valorem tax come in from better projects in industrial zones. You see, Story County did this about 15 years ago. They started doing this, and we've been shouldering the burden of residential zoning, which doesn't really cover the tax for residential services like EMS, like schools, like all of the other things that benefit from an ad valorem tax. So we need to have market multiplying anchor companies. I've heard people talk, and I'm addressing the data centers almost entirely right now because I think those are the biggest concerns for a lot of the folks here. When we look at them, there's the water rights that come with it. A lot of people are worried about their wells. I think the reclamation bonds could be an area for protectionism. I worry about moratoriums. I think people would be cutting themselves if they have residential wells. I think you could see people calling for residential wells to get metered, and I think that's a concern. But I think we should also look at how a zone change from ag to industrial actually cut water rights. When you look at NRS 533 and 534, it actually succinctly expresses that that zone change gives the water rights a haircut. So they don't even have as much water in the zone available to go and drain everyone's wells. But looking at these finer details is hard when there's a cacophony of fear-mongering and just get everybody riled up and saying no. And we have to be able to step back and look at projects for what they are. So there's a difference between shoving these projects into BLM, where it's just PILT money, and there's an impact, and they don't own water rights, versus private property and private property use cases. And we have to be discerning about how that works, because we also don't want our retirees, especially since they are the primary, like when you look at economics, when we're in downturns, it's actually retirees that hold our economy afloat because it's a constant stream of income. We need to protect that. And as an economics major, I can see those macro circles and those micro circles. And I think we need to have some real taxable revenues that do not come from the shoulders of residents and resident property owners. I'm not gonna keep beating that drum, but I do believe that I'm the right man for this job because I will scrutinize things. I'm an avid researcher. I'm not gonna pretend I'm an expert on everything, but I do know experts, and I make it a point to ask experts when I know them. You know, Ford, when he was questioned about why he didn't graduate from college, he said, I didn't need to, but you could put me on a stage and I could answer any question that you put at me as long as there's a telephone next to me. And that's a real way to think about things. And for me, I'm a collaborator. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the solutions.
You're done.
But I know enough people to help us find them. And I hope you guys will look at me more closely, micahtriplett.com, and find me on Facebook.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Micah. School district, Pete Chapin.
Good morning. My name is Pete Chapin. I'm running for Lyon County School Board of Trustees, District 2, which is in Fernley. So I'll just let you know a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Nevada, lived here my whole life. My professional career, I was in education, excuse me, in Lyon County School District. I taught high school English and social studies, and I coached football and wrestling at Fernley High School. Then became an administrator, site administrator, as assistant principal at numerous schools. Excuse me. Principal at 2 schools, elementary schools. So I'm running for school board because over the past few years, I've looked at a few things that I'm concerned about. One of them is student achievement. In our district, you know, when I was an administrator, we were right up at the top in the state student achievement, which is essentially test scores in, you know, reading and math. So it's concerning, and I won't really, oh, I don't need that. It is concerning because, like I said, we were at near the top in the state, and we're not faring so well right now. I'll just say it bluntly. So I'm running a school board because when I was a principal, I my schools were very high achieving. One school we were nationally recognized as a high performing school. I took over another school as a principal, which was average, but then we became high achieving in 1 year. And so I have the ability to look at certain things and put in programs, which are very easy to do, that raise student achievement. Another thing I look at that concerns me is student chronic absenteeism, which is really concerned because if kids aren't in school, we know they're not going to learn. So as a assistant principal and a principal, we put in some programs or just things that we did to ensure that students came to school. We created a list of kids that were attendance problems, and as soon as that bell rang and attendance was taken by teachers, we sat and we looked at, okay, who's here and who isn't here. So if your name was on that list and you're not here, well, there was 3 of us. We'd pick up the phone and we'd make phone calls, find out where these kids are. So after a while, parents got tired of us calling them, so they made sure their kids were there. And then these were smaller schools, so we had the ability to do this. We'd go get them. Now that model may not work in some of our bigger schools, but you can put a model in, just concentrate on finding out and making it important for these kids to be in school. So that's one of the things we did. Another thing that I get pretty concerned about, or I am concerned about, is teacher recruitment and retention. Well, so what we need to do is we need to face the realities of what is actually happening. And it's just an economic thing. Well, teachers don't get paid like most professions. Most kids can come out of high school and they can go to the trades, and they can make a lot more money in a few years than a teacher is gonna make in 5 years. So that's a big competition. So, what our district is doing, and I do agree with, is, that we're hiring back teachers who've retired. Well, it's a pretty good deal for districts. I mean, we're not paying their PERS now, all right? We're charging them more for the benefits. We're charging them at the high end. Another thing that our district is doing is we're taking kids or just people that have graduated from college and they can't find a job. My 2 children have, went through college and got their degrees. Well, they couldn't find jobs in the industries where they wanted or where they studied, and so they have both come back and they are teachers too. And what our district does is it's called Grow Your Own. So if you put in your time 1 year and sign up for courses to become a teacher, the district picks up the tab on the year or 2 after to get their schooling. So these are pretty good programs our district is doing currently, which I support. Another thing that has recently come about that's kind of concerning is, our district is looking at some budget cuts due to declining student enrollment. I would just say that when we look at these budget cuts, when we're talking about personnel, I advocate for keeping our frontline people in the schools, the teachers, the instructional aides, custodians. We shouldn't be cutting there. We need to find other areas to cut, wherever that be, if it's on the top end of the administrative pool, or whatever it is. I support keeping our troops, our ground troops on the front lines, because that's where we get the biggest bang for the buck. I don't know if I have anything more to say. Those are my three concerns, and that's kind of my stance on those things. Thank you for attending.
Okay. Darin Farr.
Good morning. My name is Darin Farr, and I'm currently the District 2 School Board Representative. I serve along with Mr. Elmore Bowl here, who serves the Yerington area, and so I'll probably use him as a reference a few times because we work really well together collaboratively on the school board. Before I start talking about who I am and what I do, can I get a show of hands here? How many of you went to public schools in Nevada? Okay. How many of you worked in public schools in Nevada? Outstanding. That's fantastic. Thank you. The reason why I bring that up is that we have a limited time window when we can reach these kids. You all know this, right? It's between the ages of 6 and 18. And we have those critical 12 years to get everything we can possibly get into them to prepare them for adult life, right? We all know that. You guys are all retired professionals, and you know how much workforce development is a critical need in our country. Show of hands, how many of you took care of your parents when they got older? Right? That's becoming a real need in this country. And the fact is that we've got kids that are going out into the workforce now, graduating from high school and sometimes college, like Mr. Chapin said. And you know, these are people who they're getting married young, like all of us did, and they're starting families. And the fact is they can't even afford to buy their own house or put a down payment on a house or even think about that until maybe they're in their 40s or 50s. Unless they got fortunate like myself, who went in the military after high school, and I was able to use my VA benefits to put a down payment on a home. The reason why is because we spend so much time focusing and criticizing performance scores in schools, and we don't actually spend more time talking about the why they should be in schools. The reason why I joined the school board, my wife's a school teacher. I was a long-term substitute because I had retired and I had more time on my hands than I knew what to do with. So I started teaching in the classroom. And I have 2 kids who are currently in school. And I started listening to them and what they had to say. I started talking to coworkers who were in the classroom of what's going on with these kids. Give you a little background. My wife and I graduated from Battle Mountain High School in 1988. Yerington was one of our rivals in sports, don't hold that against me. But I grew up in this area, and I got to know that when I grew up and I left Battle Mountain, or left high school in Battle Mountain, there were 2 jobs. There was agriculture or there was mining. And to be honest with you, I had no interest in either one of those fields, right? I wanted to go out and see the world. The Marine Corps offered me that opportunity. I left and I joined the Marine Corps, and my life went through the stratosphere. I was able to get out and see the world. I came back to Nevada because I missed the values that I grew up with. The people that here are loyal, they're honest, and they'll actually tell you straight to your face what's going on. We need those kind of candid conversations. The reason why I joined the school board was I was listening to Mr. Chapin, and he does bring up some valid points about areas that we needed addressing. What I was seeing was working in the classroom, and that we had aging schools that were literally falling apart. The infrastructure here, some of these schools, some of you probably have been to these schools and remember when these schools were built back 60, 70 years ago. And you're trying to modernize those schools. We've done a good job the last 4 years on the school board of increasing our infrastructure. We've replaced all the HVAC systems around the schools. We've upgraded our sports facilities. We've replaced roofs. We've done a lot of life care, address things like, I don't know, that we have electronics in all of our schools now, and we had to rewire them and put in the things that we needed in those schools. That was one of my big objectives when I came on the board. I still have 2 other objectives that I'm working on. One of those being that we have a lot of kids who will identify by the time they're in the 9th grade that will tell you they have no interest in going to college. They want to go into the trades. And our CTE opportunities have gone this way over the years, in the last 30 years, while the need's gone this way. So, I've listened to my opponent, not Mr. Chapin, but Mr. Moore, say in the past, well, we need to find more money. We have the money. It's sitting out around you all over the place. What we need to be doing is having honest conversations and doing public-private partnerships with the businesses who want these workforces and going, okay, put up or shut up. That's how it is. Put up or shut up. Invest in our schools, invest in your workforce development, offer us programs that we can't offer in our schools like diesel mechanics and electrical engineering, plumbing, HVAC, the jobs that you want to fill. That workforce is growing up right now and we have the chance to educate them. But we, because I retired from the Department of Veterans Affairs after my time in the military, and I used to think the VA made bureaucracy an art form. No, education makes bureaucracy the biggest art form on the planet, right? There is so much red tape and layers to this thing. When you get into it, you start listening to people tell you, well, here's the 15 reasons why you can't, but none of them will give you the reasons why you should. That's a big problem we have. That's what I've been doing. In the Marine Corps, we offer a couple of phrases that we live by, and this gentleman can tell you for sure. Our motto is Semper Fidelis, always faithful. One of the other ones I grew up with in the Marine Corps, learning was when I was in the infantry, is res non verba. It stands for deeds, not words. I can get up here and tell you all day long what I want to do, but I'm going to tell you what I have done, and that's we've increased CTE opportunities. We're this close to bringing an ROTC program, general ROTC program to Fernley High School, which will be available to all county students once we put the infrastructure in place. That opens a lot of doors for students to look at their future. That's important to me. I have skin in the game. I have 2 kids in this school system, and I have a wife who's a teacher who hopefully will be among your ranks someday as a retired professional. So we have a lot invested in this community. I lived in Fernley for 14 years. I've seen my kids start kindergarten. I got a freshman in high school now and a 7th grader. And I hear from these students, one of the other important aspects that no one else will talk to you about is students are a stakeholder in this process and we need to be listening to them more. We don't need to be listening to other people tell us what students should be doing and how they should be grading on things and how they should be performing on tests. We really need to be listening to what their why. Why do they want to be here? What do they want to accomplish? One of the greatest things I've done on the school board is work with Mr. Bull, and we actually put in a policy, and we've developed a policy to have a permanent student representative on our school board. That's crucial. They're a stakeholder just like you are. I've got a lot of work left to do. I've been doing it, so I'm asking your vote to let me continue doing my job. Thank you so much for your time.
You have a minute left too, you can.
Okay, that ends that part, but I would like Mario to come up and tell us a little bit why he's running for the district attorney. But he will be back in September or October when we have our general election candidates.
Don't worry, Marty, we got them all warmed up for you.
All right, thank you. Again, I will be back. Just a few points is, you know, I was told the minute you file for election, you become a politician. But this isn't a political race for me whatsoever. And I mention that because when I make a big decision, I really think things through. I talk to my kids, I talk to my wife, and I want to be 100% sure I'm willing, capable, and ready for the job. So having taken that time, I am a registered Republican. However, I will appear as a nonpartisan on the ballot because I took the time to make that decision. And I mention that because I just ask that you all pay attention to the names and the individuals in this race and not the party when you go to vote. Quite frankly, it should be a nonpartisan office like a sheriff or a judge to begin with, because not you guys, but we've got to come after everybody committing crimes. I think it's very important that the individual that runs the district attorney's office has a stake in this county, lives your way of life every day, and I do that. My opponent doesn't reside here. My kids and I, my feral cow kids and I live about 12 miles south of town. And I know your issues. I've had a unique perspective in this justice system for over a decade. I know the issues. I know how to fix them. And that's what I want to do for this community that's given me so much. I could tell you a million of these stories, but a short one on my why. So one of those little feral cow kids, Otto, is about 5 years old. And right now he wants to grow up to sell hay and be a U.S. Marshal. So every day he gets out of bed. This morning he was on the couch in his underwear with his sheriff's badge on and his wooden gun that his great-granddaddy made him. And about probably towards the end of February, his favorite song, he knows a lot of them, but his favorite song right now is Simple Man by the Charlie Daniels Band. So in about February, you all know I've been practicing a lot of defense work in Lyon County for over a decade. And I'm on a conflict list right now for Walker River so that court can stay together. In about February, I got towards the end of a 8-month case I had for Category A trafficking. And this individual was moving a lot of weight through town in Yerington. Sheriff's office knows it, I know it, District Attorney's office knows it. So as a defense attorney, I can't tell them everything that's wrong with the case. But the weekend to get in discovery, I did mention to the Deputy District Attorney, hey, there's an issue in this case and it's fixable. No one ever went and looked. It could have been resolved with a simple phone call, a little bit of follow-up investigation. I walked into the prelim 8 months later in February and they said, we do have a problem and we have to dismiss it. That individual walked right out of the courthouse back into this community, and that, for me, was the straw that broke the camel's back. Any of you familiar with that song recognize the portion where slap him on the wrist and let a drug dealer go? And I was thinking about Otto driving around in the tractor with him talking about this decision. And he said, Daddy, I want you to put bad guys away. And all I can tell you is that situation, as Sheriff Otto sings every day, made me madder than hell, and I don't want to take it anymore. So here I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Deserve a round of applause for all of our candidates. I really like to try to do this every year that it's election time and see what's out there, and we've gotten a good turnout, and I appreciate all of you coming. That's a big part. We do have a raffle if you'd like to do that, and then anytime after that, we can ask questions.
Any questions first?
No.
We're gonna do raffle.
We're gonna do raffle.
You don't have your
Questions, but please be nice and sweet and show what an RPEN member is. Okay, because we're all retired employees, so. All right. Okay. If anybody has a question? Yes?
I was the other day we talked about data centers, because they're high resource, low employment places.
Okay.
And who do you address that question to?
I'll start it off.
Okay, we'll probably do it.
So on resource development, I mean not resource. On the data centers. So the biggest thing about data centers are the stuff that we don't do, right? Because data centers have been around since the first dial-up had a data center in Virginia. Every time it morphs into something else, we look at, if you go on Google, you go, okay, it's bad here, it's bad there, we don't want it. That's all old technology. Right now, I'm part of an academy with Commissioner Hendrix, with our community development director and RCI Concepts. We're part of an academy right now that is put on by the National Association of Counties. So 18 counties out of the U.S. applied, that got accepted to that academy, where we research everything about data centers to be current. So with that being said, we do have a ordinance that we're preparing to bring to Lyon County to vote on. So we'll develop it, it'll be out in the open so everybody can see what it is, but to make sure that it's done in the correct way, that it's not being scared or anything else, and we know exactly what we're gonna get. So to me, it's a heavy amount of revenue for the county, but at the same time, I look at the houses that are coming in, not
Workforce housing, I'm not really for, but I do want them to partner with maybe with the motel industry or something like that, to where they can come in and at least be able to have something left in the community that we can use. As far as the duration, I look at what worries me the most about data centers at this moment is when they don't have an end user. Because if they don't have an end user, a data center is nothing more than a big warehouse. That's all it is. It's the components inside that require everything. So when they build them, they build a big warehouse, and if that big warehouse, say they can't get the people in, because every county in the nation right now has got data centers going in. So if you look at it, it becomes a stranded asset if they can't build that. So if it's a big warehouse and it was ready for nobody coming in, and all of a sudden they sell it or it gets foreclosed on or whatever, now you've got that big warehouse that could be now fit a trucking industry in. So now you've got all the trucks that would be in there that you didn't think were gonna be in your neighborhood. So to me, it's like, how do we plan for it to make sure that it doesn't, we don't get unintended consequences, make sure that they don't use up our resources. They've got closed loop systems now for the water, to where if you guys been in Silver Springs, Microsoft's trying to put in one there. They've got 12 acre-feet of water is what they'll be using. The one, the brand new 7-Eleven truck stop uses 10. So if you look at it, the new data centers, if they do it right, would use less, there would be the least amount of water used in any type of construction. If you put housing there, it would be more. If you put industrial there, it would be more. If you put commercial development there, it would be more. So it actually saves our resources if it's done correctly. So there's a lot that we're going through right now. I just gotta make sure that I get it all done right. I'm not gonna say it's not bad or anything else. Also, where in the county do we site it? Because if they go on public land, to me, that's a slap in the face for everybody that invested in your community already. Because they're gonna pick up that land cheap and not invest in the property that you guys wanna sell in your community. And is it where the transmission lines already are, or are new transmission lines gonna go across everybody else's property? So that's some of the issues I have. I hope that kind of gets you where you want to be.
Yes?
I was at the Silver Springs, meeting the other, I guess a couple weeks ago, there was somebody there presenting a new data center. But out of that meeting, the one thing I did find, nobody knows what they're upset about. We're not educating the public so they can make a good decision on whether they're for or against something. Because some of the questions that came out of there, I mean, they weren't listening. People that were presenting way early. They didn't have any answers. But everybody thought, oh my God, it's water. Water's been the big statement of concern with these projects. And they take very little water. And right now they're trying to do some dry cooling up in Reno to try new technology. So it's not a big water resource. They used to have big cooling ponds to drag the water in and use it to cool it down. Now everything's like he said, in a closed system. So 5.5 acre-feet would be enough water to take care of an entire campus of these things. And their projection was to put 2 campuses, which they have enough water to do at 12 acre-feet. So I think if we can get out and educate the people and have more open meetings to, for people to get their questions answered, there'll be a lot less resistance to try and do things.
Any other questions?
I think no, mine was more of an addition to what Mr. Jones was saying. So
I didn't see
I've been diving really deep into the data center discussions online, and a lot of people who are friends with me on Facebook have seen the discussion points where the water is being discussed. I think a lot of people have found resolve according to what both Commissioner Keller and Mark Jones have just described. The closed loop systems definitely reduce the water use case, but there's questions surrounding the battery storage. There's questions surrounding the power grid. There's also questions around noise and observation, like what's it gonna do? So taking everybody's considerations, and it's the way I'm understanding it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we have an opportunity for a tax burden to be shouldered by industry and it meets all of the markers of all of the concerns, at what point do we say, okay, we're okay with this? And I think that's the issue I'm running into in the online discourse. When I'm trying to discuss it, people are presuming that I'm a full-blown advocate, and I'm not. I'm an advocate for smart development that does have longevity. So one of the things Commissioner Keller just said too is, what if they don't fill it? So there's different types of data centers. There's enterprise on-premise, there's co-locations, there's cloud hyperscales, there's edge, and there's specialized niche. And when we look at the different types of data centers, some of them really do only have 10 jobs that are long-term. But like a co-location one where multiple groups are coming in, those really can have 60 to 200 jobs, and they can present opportunities for apprenticeships. And we were talking, the school was just talking about how we need opportunities for the next generation. I'm hearing solar groups trying to start apprenticeships too and trying to coordinate with the schools. My perspective is a little bit on the newer generation side of things. And I think the question I have is for the community. And that goes back to what I was just saying. At what point is there a hard stop that we can say no? And at what point is it a sensible, objective, responsible decision to make to reduce taxable burdens and improve our school districts and improve our fire districts? What is that point for you guys?
I have a question.
Wait, please.
I want to tag in a little bit of Sir Cole will probably tag in a little bit to it. We're all, I think, on the same boat that we want industry and things that are going to benefit the county and the communities that they impact. And along the line of what I was talking about earlier and with what Scott was talking about with maybe some of these industries bringing in hotels or whatever. I mean, you're gonna have a big influx of employees for a while. And if we can, I've wondered for a long time why, I understand why it's all math, but why housing is gotta be 2,500, 3,000 square foot big McMansions. The days of the 900,000 square foot 1 to 2 bedroom homes, starter homes for young families that they can build some assets in. We don't see those anymore. I mean, that's what my son was looking for. And if we can figure out a way, whether it's the hotels, and those would be good too for some shorter term, but if we can work out to get some development of some homes like that, and even the people who come in and work here for a couple of years and then sell it to somebody that's local, they can be there and work at the local pizza parlor, at the the local gas station, whatever, and help build our economy. We got to look at that. We're all looking at the concerns, and we all know that the world today is a doom and gloom kind of thing. So 99.9% of what you find out there on the internet, whatever, is going to be worst case stuff. I mean, you take a look at what computers have done. Back in the day when I was in We1, it took a room this size, with specialized air conditioning to do half of what your phone and your hand will do today. So we know that all that is coming. We just need to work with all of that in mind and try and control it going forward. That's
Any other question? Yeah, isn't that considered staff zoning when you put industrial smack dab in the middle of all ag zoning?
Run that one.
Okay, the master plan, you're talking about that. Okay, this is an industrial zone that they have to put in on the property zoning to put this data center, correct? Is that the zoning they're putting it
You're
in?
talking about the particular one out here. Mon.
Yes,
Okay.
the one in this valley.
Because it's adjacent to industrial and farm. So
Okay, so-
so it's attached to the industrial, so it could, depending on the person that owns the land, right, his property rights, whether or not he can look to what's the best use of his property and make application. Then it comes before the board.
Right, I know
to where-
that process.
So it's whether, it's not just zoning out in the middle of nowhere. It has to be attached to the same type of zoning that is there. It has to make sense. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That now I understand that. My next question is, how many data centers are you going to have proposed to be putting in one county?
So So every data center is gonna be different, right? It's gonna have a different component, like when we're just now talking about housing for, industry. Like if I look at Greenlink, those people that are gonna come in and work on Greenlink are gonna come into your community and they're gonna leave because they're still building Greenlink, right? There's people that will come in, build the, say the data center, if that one was approved. If it goes in, they'll build, and then some people might stay, but the rest will go on to the next data center, whatever. Then if you look at like NNIC, that's up in Silver Springs, that's a big industrial center, so you'll end up with people that wanna live there permanently, because they'll just go to the next building there. So if they're working on the dirt crew or electrician or whatever, they would stay in that community. So we got a lot of different issues as far as that's concerned. So siting is very important. If it's not on the power grid that's already out there, then it's an extra step, right? Because then you gotta have all the easements and everything else to get that to actually make sense.
So they have to provide their own power?
They're responsible for their own power and all, but NV Energy, or in this case, Greenlink would be supplying that to their location. But they're also supplying it back to the community if the community is in a problem, right? If they get the power, like I was talking about it earlier, when they shut off because of a fire, nowadays because of what happened in Paradise, California, when they shut it off because of fire, they have to visually go out there and look at it and say, okay, it's good, we're back on. Which means that community downstream might have been shut off. They can come back off the data center power and backfeed the community, not the other way around. They don't take from the community, but they can be a resource to the community.
Yeah, because the biggest problem is the infrastructure on the electrical.
Right, those big high lines, the high voltage, that has nothing to serve. It's gotta go through a substation in order to feed. So when they decide to put something in like out at the Monarch area where there is a spot they can feed right back in, it can go right back into the community.
Sure.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Elmer?
Yeah, and I'll ask the same question of Mr. Chapin and Mr. Farr. Mr. Chapin, you mentioned that one of your concerns is declining enrollment. And it's certainly a problem not only in Lyon County, but across the nation. In fact, I read an article yesterday that the state of Texas lost 76,000 students. And it's a huge state, and that may not sound like a huge number, but when you start applying the math to that, that's a significant financial impact to school districts, and we're not immune from that. Lyon County over the last year and a half has lost pretty close to 200 students. When you do the math there, it's a couple $1 million a year that we're losing in funding. What factors do you think are contributing to that declining enrollment?
Well, number one, and I'm an advocate for it also, is, students go to private schools, homeschool. I think parents should have a choice to send their students to where they best see fit. If it's homeschool, I would support that too, or private schools. I don't really know where our students are going because I don't see the data of where they're going. So to answer you, I think you're asking me, I support parent choice. If they choose to have their students educated somewhere other than public school, that's their right.
Mr. Farr?
Yeah, so you bring up a good point, Elmer. I've looked at some of the research studies too. Nationwide, it's a problem. Student enrollment in public schools is down across the board. Part of it is, and there is some component to that shows that in the last 25 to 30 years, our population, our birth rates are way down, and people aren't having kids as often as we were when we were coming up and that kind of thing. So that is a contributing factor. We do have, there's a study out right now that shows that 38% of the workforce between the ages of 20 and 45 is a transient nature, and so these people move on. When I was a kid, we had kids that would come to school for 4 months, and then they'd move away, and then like 2 years later, you'd show up and, hey, I know you, and they'd be back because the parents are chasing jobs, you know, and going around wherever they can find a good paying job or cost of living. I don't know if it's this way, but I know in California, in agricultural communities, it's seasonal, right? So you have families that move in and they work and then they move on and they come back, or they have a winter job and a summer job. And some of those things play into the factor too. I do think parents' choice, school choice comes into play. However, I will tell you, while it sounds great to say that, you know, I support, you know, parents to homeschool and to go line online or to go to a charter school, having been in a classroom fairly recently and having a teacher I'm married to who's been in the classroom, they get a lot of students who, when they go, the parents just go, you know what, I'm homeschooling my kids, and they take them out for a couple of years. And then they get to the point where they get fed up or they've reached their level of being able to teach a child, and they bring them back to public school. And 99% of the time, those kids are 2 to 3 grade levels behind when they come back to school. And now that's the burden on the teacher who just gained them to try to get, and that adds to our performance levels, by the way. That does add into it. That's factored into, well, our kids are reading less at a less grade level and they're doing math at a less grade level. It's because these things happen where people take them out and they come back in. Same thing happens with Lyon Online. My wife's got 2 students in her classroom right now that were Lyon Online last year, and they came in and they're full grade and a level and a half behind. And I'm not trying to say Lyon Online is bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's a difference between having a classroom education where you spend time with that kid every day, because let's not kid ourselves, folks. Teachers are not just teachers anymore. They're social workers, they're surrogate parents, right? They're sometimes nurses. There's a lot of socioeconomic situations that go on in the classroom with a teacher. And I think it's part of the burden and the stress factor that's leading to burnout with teachers leaving the profession too, because we're asking them to do more and more for less money, and that needs to change. Because we can talk about parents' rights and accountability all the time. I'm a parent. I have kids in the school system. And my kids, I talk to them every day about how their day's going. And they'll tell me stuff that I hear about, and Elmer's, and I've had these stories where we've talked, and you go, how is that kid able to get away with that? Because the parent won't do anything about it. The school can't do anything about it, and we're caught in between. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't always value parents' rights, but we have to sometimes have that conversation about parent accountability too, because we're seeing less and less of it in our schools.
I agree.
Good, thank you.
And I got a question for the school board. I have some businesses in Mississippi, and I was just out there, and I asked them about their school system. And they were 48, and now they're 17th or 14th in the nation. So what were they doing that got them into that, you know, formula? They call it the Mississippi formula. And if I was on the board, I'd be jumping on the phone and finding out what the hell they're doing. Because their teachers are paid the worst in the country. The least amount of money in the country, Mississippi's. Now they're actually gonna get a raise now. Prove they need more money. But so it's not always the money that can change things. You know, you've got to buy into we've got to get the kids to buy into the program, the parents to buy into the programs. But I would highly recommend somebody from this school board reach out to the Mississippi school board and find out what the heck they did. You know?
You bring up a great point, Mr. Jones, but I would caution you that having listened to, and I've been on the National School Board Association, and I've been to the national conferences and talked to people, and actually serve on, I did serve on, and now Mr. Bowl is doing it in my place, is the NASB, which is the State Association of School Boards. And I've listened to counterparts from other parts of the country and come and introduce programs. And you can really do a deep dive into, because to me, the first thing and I'm not saying I'm a cynic, but I hear jump from 48 to 17th, that's an alarm bell going off in my head going, okay, there's a reason for that. It's not always going to be a good reason why they jump that way. I would say this, if you dig into their data, because Oklahoma can say the same thing right now, that they jumped from 49th in the country to certain standards, they jumped to 21st. And the reason why is they got rid of standardized testing. They did, flat across the board. They just said, we're no longer gonna do a standardized test, we'll do an in-grade assessment exam, which is what we all grew up doing, which is you got grades at first grade through 12th grade. Our school system is set up differently. We don't start doing grades until 7th grade and accountability measures there. And then we have standardized tests that the state wants and that the federal government wants, and then we grade ourselves amongst other states. As soon as they took those requirements off the board in Oklahoma, all of a sudden it's like, well, our numbers don't look so bad. Now we're over here. The other thing Oklahoma did that really changed because every state's got their own method for how they do it. Here we call it the STAR system. We grade schools in Nevada against other schools to see who's a 5-star and who's a 1-star school. Here's some things that you and the public should probably be aware of that are rating into those STAR systems. It's not so much the school, sometimes it's the community. For example, you get dinged on a STAR rating for a school you're at, or the school site, being in a community that doesn't have early childhood development or prenatal care. That's a ding on your record right there, right? That's unfair. How's that fair? How's Yerington and Dayton and Silver Springs and Fernley schools, automatically you got a check mark saying that's a ding against you because you don't have that in your community. It's a rural community. Why are we be compared to Clark and Washoe for what they have available in their communities? If you don't have certain programs like a number of mental health counselors available for the aggregate number of students that you have needing an IEP, that's a ding. Can't control that. They have no say over that, right? So that's partially what goes into it. I'm not saying it's everything. I'm just saying if you look at a metric that they're looking at, because there's a cross spectrum of them that they look at, and if you can go in and you can remove a couple of those things, well, yeah, we'd look a lot better too if we took certain things off the board, but we don't have that ability to because of NRS or other things. So that doesn't answer your question, but it does address what you're saying. Why aren't we doing what they're doing? Well, I can't speak for what Mississippi's doing, but they did something to jump that high. And it wasn't that they revamped their pedagogy or their matriculation of students. They did something to take something off the board.
So my question was,
Based in Dayton for 30 years, plant manager 12 of them. We were the first industry really in Lyon County, for sure in the Dayton Park. I will tell you, and this question is for both the district and the commission. When business wanted to move to Nevada, they came to us and asked us, how are your employees? How are your resources? How was the experience building a plant in this county? And we would tell them. And I think you have the same thing happening right now with existing companies and companies looking to come in. What is your plan? I mean, you brought up CTE and going to the private business. Good idea. Go find out from them what their needs are. Put a group together and say, how is your employee base? What can we better do to serve you? Commission, same thing. How was their experience? Ask them what was good and what was not so good, and then develop a plan to improve that. You know, put on your big boy pants, take the negative information for what it is, and formulate a plan to improve, because if we don't improve that experience,
Well, we can get them well on their way. We can.
I support anything that sparks student interest in school and prepares them for their future. My good friend Scott Lomry took care of all that. I was on the curriculum side, and I will just tell you, testing's not the end all. It doesn't tell you really how smart a student is or how not smart it is. My look at testing is it gives, on the instructional side, it pinpoints student weakness or student strength and helps teachers address the weaknesses of kids. On the